Welcome to another episode of Joy and Gratitude, where we untangle ourselves and find our clarity. And I am so excited about this episode because I get to do it with Beth. Beth, how are you doing today?
Oh, it's such a good question, Nio. Let's see. Today I am feeling a little warm right now. Like my temperature is a little bit hot and I feel a tiny bit under the weather. Not 100%, but I'm like maybe like 85%. But I feel a little energized and enthusiastic about this topic. And I also know that whenever we get on a pod together, my energy is elevated and I always feel much better. So that's how I'm doing today. How are you doing today?
I am finding back my foundational peace. And what it means is I have been traveling so much and I have been scattered that now I need to get back centered.
Mm.
So, in a way, I think that our um, today's topic should be as a Jersey girl, I must say it in the Jersey way. How you doing? And what does that mean to you?
What does that mean? What I love about this topic, so just to clarify for everyone, to clarify for everyone, the topic of how are you doing? How are you doing? This question we ask each other how many times a day? I mean, how many times a day does somebody say, "How are you? How are you doing?" And how we answer it, I think, is really meaningful. So I tried to answer it with you as a human that I trust and I love and I enjoy with honesty so that we could go get our connection to a deeper level immediately. Why mess around and pretend that I'm doing fine? The answer fine, it's such a throwaway. Fine doesn't mean anything. I'm not telling you anything when my answer to you is I'm fine. Now, part of what I want to talk about sometimes that's a really appropriate answer
Yeah,
depending on the context. If you don't know the person really well or you're in a place where you're feeling protective and you want your answer to be fine, I think that's okay too. But I think if you are in a moment with someone that you trust and you love and you can go deeper, that it would be great if we let that question be more meaningful and drive a deeper level conversation than staying at surface level.
I completely agree. And everything has to do with the moment, doesn't it?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
the way you respond to that question really has to do with the setting. Um, there are times that we are in a very vulnerable state. And when that question hits us, it's like a punch in the gut because we may be in the workforce and we may be in the office and somebody says it in passing. They really don't want to know how you're doing. They just are doing a pleasantry to get into the meeting, get into the topic at hand. Um, but you're going through something and somebody just asks you that question and your brain floods with emotion and end up saying fine because you know what to do in corporate America and you just say fine. Um, but inside, you feel little pieces of you breaking up.
Mm.
And it kind of kicks up your vulnerability. You know, safety is something that we all struggle with. And that question is a question, as you stated, that you can only really evolve with in a safe environment. And another thing that came to mind is even with family, it doesn't mean it's safe
Mm.
because there's some people in your family that really don't want to embrace because of their generation, um, because of just the way you grew up. They don't want to embrace vulnerability. They don't want to hear the story. Um, you know, generationally, boomers grew up that your arm could be falling off and you're still, I'm fine. Yeah, because you were not supposed to show emotion.
To share.
Yeah. Then we got into our Gen X, and we were kind of, yeah, I want to share a little, but not too much. Not enough to make myself seem weak. Because remember, we drank from a fire hose.
Yeah.
We were on the streets until those lights came on. No, our parents weren't. They had to be reminded that it was 10 o'clock and where are your kids? So, so let's just be real about what Gen X went through. And then you have the millennials where we as parents let them have feelings.
Encourage them even
We
maybe.
encouraged it. We took a lens from Mr. Rogers, who
Mm.
was the first person on TV that actually said to children, it's safe to feel.
Mm.
It's safe to be scared. It's safe to have questions, you know. And then we moved to the Gen Z, and their mentality is I just throw up my emotions in front of you.
Tell you,
Yeah,
share with
they
you.
tell you everything. You be in a job interview and they're like, I have anxiety. And you're just like, child, you don't have to tell me that. But they do because they are just being very clear of who they are as a whole person.
Yes, yes. And
So,
I think there's a
yeah,
lot of, when I think about it, certainly for our generation, I can speak for myself, there's fear. So I think for me, if you answer truthfully what's going on for you, one, you don't know what the other person's going to say on the other side. How will they receive that? And if you put yourself out there and they're not going to hold you in a way that feels good, that's scary. What if they don't respond in a good way? Or I think honestly, one of the things I realized, and I can speak to a really recent example, is if I put myself out there and the person does respond in a way that can hold me, maybe I'm then going to crumble. So sometimes I'm just not ready. So I was in a dog park the other day, and I'll share with the pod that my father, who I talk about on this pod a lot, passed away. And the good news is it was a very peaceful passing, and I feel really calm to know that he doesn't suffer anymore and that he is sort of around me at all times. And that's a beautiful thing. But literally, when I say to you, the first morning I went out on a nature walk with a friend in the dog park and we were in the woods, and this woman came by and said, "How are you? And how was your Thanksgiving?" with such beautiful energy. And I was like, "It was great." And literally, what? That was the antithesis of my truth. And so as we then passed by, my close friend just started laughing at me. Like, really? You answered that you were great. You didn't even say fine. You went the other way. And I had to reflect that I did that out of fear, that if I even tapped into how wretched my my holiday had been, that I might just keep going, right? There's this weird thing that I think we can sometimes go through. And you and I talk about,
yep,
if you just feel it for 90 seconds, that we think it's never going to stop. Like if I just start crying and feeling and emoting about it, it will take over. That I had to overcompensate so much that my answer was almost the opposite of my truth, which I found really intriguing. I didn't even answer in neutrality, which would have been an
fine.
appropriate response. Fine would have been fine. But instead, I went over with great. And I really thought about it afterwards. And I thought that was my way of protecting that I
That's
wasn't
right.
sure how to answer. So I want to say that I want us to be able to answer from truth when it feels right. And that's the beauty, is distinguishing that and trusting. It comes back to trust. We talk so much about trust, but trusting ourselves to know, how can I answer with more vulnerability to drive deeper level connection with someone? Because there's nothing better when you answer with some truth and some vulnerability, and the person does hold you in some way or responds in a way that shows reciprocity and mutuality, that enhances how you forever will connect with that human. Those moments, you remember them. I mean, we've talked about our connection, meeting each other in that beautiful space of connection and vulnerability and reciprocity. Those moments are amazing. So you got to put yourself out there to get them. You're not going to have those moments if you don't put yourself out there a little bit and say what's really going on with you and let someone see the truth that you hold. But I think we also do get to use some discretion, that we get to trust ourselves to know when is the right moment to put ourselves out there a little bit, to build a bridge, to drive trust and connection. And when is there a moment where really maybe we're not ready, and that's okay too.
That's right. And that's the imperfection of the human experience. It's connection is a perfect exchange, but the imperfection of who we are is
Mm.
what makes it an experience. I think one of the things that you stated, which is the most important, is that um, discernment of the right individual to connect with, who has the energy that's going to receive um, what your vulnerability is, and who has the energy that can't handle it. And I think that when you made the statement, great, you knew that wasn't the person that you wanted to be vulnerable with.
Yes. Yeah,
What?
you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
You're
you knew.
absolutely right. And I
The other,
trusted that. That's how
yeah.
I like had to come out, sort of come over to another place. It is true because when it is that, and sometimes this can happen where somebody, uh, maybe that energetic connection is there, and they ask a question, and then maybe a tear arises or a quiver, and you don't know, it's unexpected, but it's your energy really saying, this is a person where I think I'm going to be a little bit more open. It just happened. I think you're right. It almost happens naturally. And one of the things that we've talked about before, this idea of doing versus being, I think is also really important to this conversation. So we say, how are you doing?
Mhm.
And in a way, I'm thinking about it even grammatically. How are you doing? Not what are you doing? So how did that ever become a thing? It's asking you about an action. How are you doing? What are you doing? The doing part versus the being part. We're so focused on the doing, where we get into how you define yourself through your actions rather than this is the human that you are and how you show up, that there's a distinguishing feature between those two things. And the question of how you are doing automatically goes to the actions, the activities, the doing, and moves you away from the emotional state that you might be, just a state of being of who you are. So really, could the question be, how are you being today? Or how do we define it to be, how are you, with a question of doing or being, and can we answer to reflect whichever we're feeling more about that day? Maybe we're in a place where we are doing, and you say, I'm feeling a little frazzled, I have a lot on my plate, I'm feeling the activity is too much for me to handle. That's a doing thing. But this idea, what I tried to answer when you first said, how are you doing, I actually answered, how are you being? I said, I'm warm. I'm feeling warm today. I'm feeling hot. So the sensations of me and my physical body, that's a being thing. And so answering from that place, I'm feeling tender. How are you feeling? That's like a state of being instead of necessarily a state of doing. I love it when we can get to that place and start to ask people the questions that are more around the being and less around the doing. Unless, of course, it's appropriate to ask about the doing if you're in a mode where that's something that's applicable to the conversation. But I wonder, when we just say, how are you? It'd be interesting for us to start collecting how many people answer that from a state of being or a state of doing.
You know, that brings up for me conditioning. We have
Yeah.
been conditioned to be performance. And that's why we say, how are you doing? It's for performative, right? As opposed to being in our presence, being ourselves, being our
Mm.
whole person. So the expectation that has been laid out to us has been, how is your performance? How are you performing right now? And instead of, how is your being? How is your presence in this state, in this situation, where you could say, um, like you said, the feelings, you could state your warmth or cold. You could state your state of mind. You could state your desire to assist. That is your presence. That is what impacts and what you really are as a whole person. The other thing that, as I think of, how are you doing? I think about how important it is that we need to ask that question of ourselves on a daily basis.
Mm.
That is the wake up question, and that is the go to bed question. When we wake up, it's always important to ask ourselves, how are we doing today, and who are we going to show up as today? And set that very clear to give us the path of the day. And then as we go to bed, we should be asking, what are we grateful for? And what did we learn that day? And it could be very small or it could be very impactful. It all depends on the day. And then at the end, how are you? Are you now safe? Are you now able to rest? Have you been able to understand the learning and put it in its place instead of carrying it as a fear, as something that I want to relive over and over again because I can't change it, but I'm still carrying it? Where do I leave it? Do I leave it as a learning? Do I leave it as a goal? Do I leave it as laughter and joy? That makes the difference on how we are able to present as a full human being.
It's making me think about the word choice, which we also love. That when you talk about the wake up moment where we ask ourselves, how am I doing? How am I feeling? How am I today? I find that I am doing that more and more. So I love that you're having our listeners think about that. And I try to gauge it without judgment, no judgment zone, just,
No.
and it is a, for me, it's a physical feeling as
Mhm.
well, right? Sort of, it's a mindset and a physical feeling combined, which has taken some time to be able to combine my physical body with my brain and go, how am I doing right now? But I do that as like a check because then I can make a choice. So, perfect example, you mentioned anxiety. I've been having some anxiety lately
Yeah.
with a lot of the things that are happening in my life. And I'll feel anxious. I'll wake up and go, oof, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. I'm feeling like I have a cold coming on. Okay, what will I do now based on that feeling as I get out of bed? And I can make different choices. That's the beauty. We never lose the power of choice. So, our ability to choose to slow down, to check in with ourselves in the morning and then again at night, does give us the ability to make a different choice. Maybe I'm going to have tea. Maybe I'm going to eat something differently. Maybe I'm going to take extra vitamin C on that day. Things that
Mhm.
actually will put myself first based on what I found, or anxiety. So that was just the cold. Oh, I'm feeling like I have a cold coming on. I've been around 6 people. I've been flying. I need to do something different today. Amazing. Very concrete actions I could take. From the anxiety standpoint, do I need to stay in bed a little longer
Mm.
and do some gratitude for what I have in my life to calm myself before I just hop out of the bed? Do I have time for that? If I don't have time for that, do I get to control where I'm going? If it's a walk to meet a friend, is that what I really need? Can I check that for a moment and think, is that really what I need? Will that help my anxiety? Oftentimes, that's exactly what will help my anxiety because I'm going to process, I'm going to be out in nature. We've talked about understanding what we know calms us.
Mhm.
And I know that that does. But there are days where maybe that wouldn't be the answer for me. Maybe I would need more rest. Use the word rest. Rest is a powerful tool, and we all underestimate the power of rest, I think, each and every day. And that rest is something we can lean into as a resource to ourselves throughout the day, not just so in that morning, can you take an extra little bit of time? In the afternoon, if I can't take it in the morning, can I plan for it? I love that I do that sometimes. I go, oof, I can't sleep anymore. I got to get up and go. But at my break, could I go rest somewhere to tune into my body, to take that little breather, get a cup of tea, maybe think of some things I'm grateful for, and just bring myself back to calm? And those are all things I get to choose in the moments that I check in. And I think the issue is we don't check in with ourselves enough. So, your idea, even if it's just a baby step check in that says, I'm going to check in the morning before I get out of bed, and I'm going to check in at night before I go to sleep to capture learnings, to understand if I would have changed anything or done it differently, and to set myself up to let go and be able to really use the rest overnight.
Oof.
The power in a personal check-in. So the how are you doing for ourselves? What a beautiful check-in, Neo. Beautiful.
Absolutely. And you were preaching to me on the rest issue. I have been running around the world in the last few weeks and actually traveling globally. And rest has been a commodity I yearn so much. And
Mhm.
I really haven't been able to align it. But choice, as you stated, was really important to help me through the situation because I was checking in with myself to make it through. And as I was checking in, I was realizing that as things were occurring, I had to make a decision. And a wonderful, her name is Abigail, um, human design coach, actually, my human design coach, um, taught me three very important things to ask yourself. And I do it all the time, especially when I'm in anxiety, when I am stressed.
Mm.
She taught me to ask myself, is it being done to me? Meaning that I have adopted the situation to be in a victim situation. It's,
Mhm.
oh, do you believe they're doing this to me? Oh, how could they do this to me? Is it being done for me? Meaning that it's coming to me as a gift, as a passage, as a way of enlightenment. Is it something that I needed to be able to learn and grow?
Mm.
And then the real powerful one, is it happening through me? Meaning I'm an observer and I am not attached to what's going on because I know that I don't own the stress, the baggage. I know that it is a moment in time. And as I was traveling to multiple countries and going through some really weird things I had never experienced before, I literally had to hone in on those three questions and continuously check on myself because it made the difference between enjoying the experience, enjoying the place, and not missing out on these amazing places I went to and being trapped in my mind. So, how are you doing? Is something that's a gift for you.
Mm.
It's a decision, it's a choice, it's the ability for you to center yourself. I guess that's a drop mic moment.
It did. I was like, I'm gonna be silent. I'm hoping everybody can also choose this moment. It felt like a moment to center, right? To just
Yeah,
force that personal check-in. How are we doing?
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I went through some weird things through custom that I had never, ever experienced in my life.
Mm.
Um, I have a permanent contact lens in one eye, and then I have another contact lens in another eye. And when I was in Dubai, you have to look at the cameras. Now I look at those cameras all the time in America, and when you're going through all the and it and it always pops up just me. For some reason in Dubai, their camera is so specific that multiple people popped up when
Oh.
I did the raid. Yeah. And the guy said, take off your contact lens. And I panicked because I am literally blind without my contact lens. I have low vision. I am short of being clinically blind. So it was like, I, I don't have the means to take it off because I didn't have a case with me. It was in my suitcase. And if I do, I'm going to need a seeing eye dog to get me to the next
To get
post. Yeah.
right.
Um, and he says, "Well, you can't come into Dubai if you don't take that lens off." And he says, "Get out of here. You got to go to station number 1." So they take me to station number 1, and now I am close to having a panic attack, and I had to check in with myself, and I'm just like, I refuse to say it's being done to me. You know, this is their standard procedure. It happens to everyone, and I'm sure that we will get through this. So I had to move to the through me real quick when your heart automatically wants to go to me, right? I had to just like bounce my butt to this is happening through me. It's not about me.
Oh,
It is what it is. And they took me to that number 1 bay in customs. And there were 3 guys and they're like talking a mile a minute. And finally they get to me. And I explained the situation. And he says, he actually was quite kind. He says, "Well, this is what we see." And there were 3 people. My picture, but 2 other people.
wow.
And I said, "Oh." He says, "That's why we can't let you in because it will those people will attach to you and we will have a problem when you want to come back into Dubai."
Interesting.
And you know, it was happening through me. It wasn't it was true. So I said to him, "Well, I can only take one out. The other one can't come out." And he says, "That's fine." He went to another computer, another camera, and he set it up for one eye to be the one that read. And somehow he actually called a medic that they had and brought me a case. So it was happening through me. It wasn't happening at me. It wasn't happening to hurt me. It was happening because that's their rules. And I took out the contact lens and he read and it was fine. And he says to me, "This may happen to you when you come back. However, now that we have you, you can go through fast track and it won't read your eyes. It'll just basically read your face and you should be okay." And, I ended up being the last person in customs from this event at 1 o'clock in the morning. Joyous, just joyous. Uh, and, I went through it. And once I got to the other side, I was in total gratitude mode and just grateful that I made it through and that I didn't have a panic attack, which was
Mm.
honestly my go-to in that situation. I'm coming to Dubai. I'm coming to do work. I can't believe this. Well, the whole thing, snotty nose and everything that goes with it. Um, but the test didn't end there. I go through, get my luggage, go outside, and the car service that was waiting for me left. So now I was, looking for my name. There was nobody with my name. I ended up calling the hotel. Um, and I ended up having to wait another 45 minutes for the new car service to come. But through it all, I realized this was the worst that could happen on the trip because I kept going to, how are you doing? What's going on? And I made the decision that this was the worst that could happen on the trip. And guess what? I made it through.
You made it through.
And it was the worst that happened on the trip. The rest of the trip was iconic. It was beautiful. Everything about it was genuinely amazing because I was able to check with myself and I
Yes.
was able to just understand that I didn't own the drama.
Mm.
But if I didn't ask myself, how are you doing through this? What's going on? I would have been talking to you and say, don't go to Dubai. And that's not the way I feel. I'm telling everybody, go to Dubai. It is freaking amazing
Oh,
because I understand that they have their rules and you have to just play by the rules. We expect them to play by our rules when they come to America, play by their rules. And you know what? Their rules are not so exuberant or crazy. They're fair.
yes. And the personal check-in made all the difference. So if we can do that for ourselves, if we can get into a practice of doing our own personal check-ins, I also think will enhance when we ask that question of others. When I ask you, Neo, how are you doing? It's going to be a little bit more meaningful because we'll be in the practice of knowing what it feels like to do that for ourselves. And can we do that with such sentiment and authenticity that I'm asking you because I really want to know, not surface level. I'm just saying that. I think there could be such beauty in that. And I think we could start with ourselves.
It has to start with ourselves because recognition of self is the beginning of everything.
Mhm.
It's the beginning of joy. It's the beginning of gratitude. It's the beginning of you meeting your purpose. Once you know who you are and you are clear in clarity of your feelings, your emotions, and also how you can move through resiliently the pain, the fears. Everything is easy because you can make the right choices for you.
Mm.
They might not be my choices, but they'll be your choices. And that's the value is making choices. And if you skin your knee, you get up and do it again. It's okay.
It's okay.
It always is. It always works out. It always works out. So, with that, let's think of a song that talks about that ride that we go through in our emotions. And I've selected Tracy Chapman. I actually love Tracy Chapman. I love the grit in her voice, and I love the metaphors in her songs. And I'm going to go with Fast Car because it's a road trip of emotions, life, and ownership of self. Let's see what Gratitude Rocks has to say.
Let's see. All right. Hmm. The word is kind. Yes. And it seems so appropriate that we would just be kind to ourselves. We talked about it all starting with self. We talked about a personal check in. And truly, I think instituting a practice around personal check-ins at night and in the morning is a step in being really kind to ourselves. It's from the check-in that we get to choose kindness and how we create what we may shift or change in that day to be kind to ourselves so that we can show up as the humans that we really want to be.
Absolutely. What a powerful word for all of us to embrace, to be kind to ourselves. And with this, let's remember to ask ourselves in the Jersey way, how you doing? And at the same time, know that you have the right and the choice to answer it any way that makes you feel safe. So please join us in the future for the next episode of Joy and Gratitude.